Welcome to Chapter 19's review. We're talking about presenting your speech online. Very relevant to this class. I typically skip this chapter when I teach it face-to-face because it's not totally relevant, even though it can be useful in the future. But in your case, because this is a totally online class, I think that some of the information gleaned today would be useful for you in this class and in the near future. So let's get into it. All right, so the special nature of the online environment is something that you have to consider. Online presentations require more preparation than in-person speeches. The online speeches present unique challenges compared to in-person speeches. It takes more time to prepare. In an online environment, you don't have the same relationship to your audience. You aren't able to access feedback in real time. In our class, you're going to be doing peer-to-peer feedback, so you might get some responses to your speech in 2 to 3 days, and they're going to have time to think about what they want to say to you, as opposed to that immediate feedback that you would get in a face-to-face situation. There are also many potential sources of interference. Remember what we said interference was? It was internal and external noise. So in the case of an online environment, that could be technological glitches that make it hard for you to effectively produce your speech online, or technological glitches that makes it hard for you, for your audience, to hear what you're saying and to access your speech. And there's also all of the issues that come with traditional speaking. You can still have anxiety doing your speech online. So you want to consider all of those issues. And there's no substitute for the experience with online speaking. There are some things you can do to get started to be more effective at the process. All right, so you have your unique challenges and demands with adapting to the online environment. It is different from preparing for an in-person speech, but there are also similarities. But today we're going to focus on some of the differences and some of the challenges. So let's talk about the special nature of the online environment. Unlike in-person speeches, online speeches lack immediate audience feedback. Like we said, in your case, you're going to get it in 2 to 3 days. The speaker can't gauge the audience's reaction as effectively, and you also have interference, and that's what we just discussed. All right, so there are 2 kinds of online speeches that are discussed in the book. The first is the recorded online speeches, and these are designed primarily for viewing on the internet after being recorded. So examples include many of the TED Talks we've seen throughout the years and speeches recorded for online public speaking classes. Those are the speeches you're going to be producing in our class. They're usually identical to what would be delivered for an in-person audience, but you make the modifications to bring that kind of in-person feel to your audience online. The second type of speech is a real-time online speech, and these are created specifically for an audience that will view them online as they're being delivered live. So streaming is big right now, so I'm sure most of you are familiar with some online conversational streamers of that nature on Twitch or YouTube now. Everywhere has online streaming, TikTok. But in this case, you would be giving your formal speech using live streaming of some kind. All right, so people will view them as you deliver them. The speaker is typically seated close to the webcam, talking to a remote audience, so it's also extemporaneous. And you do this during job interviews, training sessions, and presentations to clients and supporters, maybe group projects where you guys all meet on Zoom. So those are the 2 types of speeches that are typically given online. While there's some overlap, the distinction between these 2 types is important to keep in mind when preparing an online speech. Recorded speeches can be recorded speeches can be prepared similarly to in-person speeches, while real-time speeches require more adaptation to the online environment. So guidelines for online speaking. The first guideline is that you want to control the visual environment. Controlling what the audience sees on a screen is crucial for online speakers. Key elements of this includes the setting that you choose. You want to make sure you choose a quiet, professional-looking space without distracting elements in the background. You want to choose good lighting. Ensure proper lighting that clearly and pleasingly presents you as a speaker. Avoid backlighting from windows. Make sure your room isn't too dark, things of that nature. Framing for real-time speeches, sit 2 to 3 feet from the webcam so you will fill most of the frame of the chest up. So you want to make sure that, particularly in this class, we can see you from the chest up, and we can see the top of your head, and we can kind of look into your eyes. So you want to really look into your webcam as if you're engaging a person. The webcam eye is your audience's eye, so consider that. You want to make sure that you make eye contact, like I just said. Maintain eye contact by looking directly into the webcam. You want to pay attention to your personal appearance. Dress professionally in solid colors that work well on camera. Avoid too much white, really bright colors, patterns that are really busy, or really glitzy prints. You want to look good, but you don't want that your clothes to draw attention away from you and your presentation. All right, so another thing you want to do is adapt your nonverbal communication to the online speaking experience. You want to adapt your gestures and posture, so sit up straight and remain relaxed and confident. And you can practice this before your first speech by just recording yourself and watching the recording. Keep doing it until you're comfortable seeing yourself and you like the way that you look. All right, so sit up straight and remain relaxed. Use natural but controlled hand gestures. Too many movements can be distracting and look unnatural. You want to make sure you have good facial expressions. So ensure your expressions look natural and are aligned with the speech's content. If you are doing a speech that is serious, you want to have a serious facial expression and use a serious verbal tone. If your speech is exciting, you want to mirror that even in your online speech. And the benefit of online speeches that we're doing is that you have time to rehearse and practice and look at yourself and become more conscious of how you look on screen. So take that into consideration. I think in some ways, these type of speeches are more fun than streaming speeches because you can practice, you can prepare. All right, so we want good facial expression, good eye movement. Avoid looking away from the camera. Practice maintaining steady eye contact. You want to make sure you adjust your pacing, which is another issue. Online audiences can be easily distracted, so pacing is really important. Use variety in what appears on screen. I'm sorry. So for instance, with this PowerPoint, I try to make sure that every few seconds I'm moving along so you see something new in addition to hearing my voice. Alternate between showing yourself and showing a visual aid and keep the audience engaged in that way. You want a brisk tempo, not too slow where people will lose interest or start to look at other things, but you want to maintain a crisp and steady pace to prevent the audience from losing interest. So if you do it too fast, they will also lose interest as well. So you want to be mindful of your pacing, that it's balanced and good enough for the audience to be able to keep up. So another thing you want to do is not forget your audience and consider audience awareness. It can be really easy to kind of lose sight of the audience when you're speaking online because they're not there in real time, but speakers must keep them in mind. You want to consider the audience's interests, knowledge, and attitudes when they are not physically present. So you are at El Camino. All of your classmates are online. So, of course, you don't know too much about them. But based on the introductions we did last week, you can glean some things that they may be interested in. Based on the fact that they're El Camino students, you know something about them. They're in college, so they have concerns that college students have. They probably have interest in learning about career fields that you can introduce them to, or interesting concepts in communication or science or finance that you think people in this demographic would be interested in. You can actually go on El Camino's website and find out a lot about the demographic of the El Camino community and say, what would a El Camino college student want to hear about? How can they access financial aid? How to transfer to a 4-year school? What are the most lucrative or interesting jobs that the Bureau of Occupational, I can't remember the name, but I think the Bureau of Labor will tell you what jobs they anticipate will need more employees or employers and what jobs will start to lose employees in the future. So you can kind of do a speech on that. Be creative considering what you do know about your audience. Make sure that you are having this mental dialogue. We're going to discuss that in a minute, which is this back and forth. You are anticipating what your audience knows about the topic you chose and what you can teach them, how much you can teach them. Keep in mind that you only have typically in these speeches like 4 to 6 minutes, 6 to 8 minutes to convey a lot of information on a topic that you could probably easily speak for hours on. So you want to be selective about what you think is best for your audience to know, where their frame of reference is, like how much you think they know about the topic and what you can teach them in 4 to 6 minutes. So keep all those things in mind as you prepare for your speeches online, just as you would if you were to prepare for a face-to-face in-person speech. All right. Make sure you practice extensively. So rehearse with the technology that you have. Practice using the same equipment and software that will be used in your presentation. So your first speech is due in a couple of days. Right now, today, tomorrow, you should be kind of practicing and fidgeting with your computer, or if you're going to use some of the technology at El Camino's library, go ahead and do that. And just, you can record yourself reading a little paragraph from something online. So you just want to see how you respond to it. You can take a poem or a short story and write out the basic skill or the basic themes in the story, or some bullet point notes that you want to take. Practice what you would say about the story if you were summarizing it, and that'll give you a sense of how you're going to do your speech in the future. All right, so the idea is to practice. Record your practice at the actual location. Set up an imaginary audience if you can. Review your recording to assess and think about your eye contact, your body language, the visual aids, all of that stuff. And that will help you improve when you do it for the final video that you want to submit. You can even do it twice and look at both videos and decide which one you like more. So that's possible. All right, so another thing you want to consider is the technology you're using for your online speeches. You want to choose a software that will accommodate what you're trying to achieve with this speech. Various software options exist for real-time online speeches, and that includes WebEx. Canvas has its own kind of speech software, so you can actually record your speech in Canvas. What I do and what I recommend you doing if you don't want something that's too difficult is to do it in YouTube and then just post a link into the classroom. So that can be an easy way to do it. You record it on your computer or using a camera, upload it to YouTube, as many of you probably have done already, and then just post the link in the classroom. That would be one of the easiest ways to do it. You can use Skype, Zoom, Adobe Connect, Google Hangouts. There's so many options. And the features vary, so consider something that will be easy for you to use, that you think will work in a classroom setting. All right. So make sure you learn the software that you choose. Master the selected software to avoid technical difficulties on the day of your speech. Spend a few days practicing with it, just rehearsing your speech or rehearsing some other document, so you can familiarize yourself with like screen sharing and things that you will need to do to show visual aids online. Always make sure you have a backup plan. So one thing for sure is that technology fails. All right, develop a contingency plan. What are you going to do if the software you chose isn't working? Do you have a backup software? Do you have a camera where you can just record yourself and then upload it later? You can also move to an audio only format if you have to. In this class, there's no need for that. I really expect you to be able to either record it on the webcam on your laptop or use a camera. All right, so there should be no need for audio only because this is a presentation. But in other situations, you may be able to do that, as I'm doing now. I'm catching up with a lot of work, so I don't want to be on camera. I just want to kind of move through it, and that's what I'm doing. But in the future, I will make some videos where you will be able to see me. All right. Make sure your speech is audience sympathetic. So the audience typically understands technical issues. They will take some consideration for the fact that technology fails, but you should still have a backup plan to demonstrate professionalism and consideration for your audience's grace. So just because they say, okay, we know that this is difficult, so we're not going to judge you harshly on it, doesn't mean you can just kind of check out of putting together a decent presentation. So consider that as you prepare. All right, so in summary, you want to make sure that you know the two types of speeches, recorded and real-time speeches, each with specific challenges. For our class, you will be doing only recorded speeches. You want to adapt to the online environment. So online speeches require adaptation of visual, verbal, and technical elements to ensure effectiveness. And always have your backup plan. So know one or two softwares that you can use to record your speeches and rehearse. Even if you think you're a great speaker, make sure you read over your script, read over your notes. You should have some of this from memory so that you can speak with confidence and authority on the topic that you select. So be sure to do all those things before you submit your first speech next week.